She's passionate about telling stories of amazing women who are rocking the world and empowering women to live, love, and thrive. Here's your host, Katherine Gray.
Hello, and welcome to Live, Love, Thrive Women's Empowerment Hour, brought to you by 360karma.com. We're happy to have you with us today, and we're happy to have our guest, who is the director of the Center for Women's Advancement at St. Mary's right here in Los Angeles. Please give a warm welcome to Emerald Archer. Hi, Emerald.
Hi.
Or I should say Dr. Emerald Archer, right?
Emerald's fine, but yes, thank you.
Well, it's got to be great having a name like Emerald, because really, I mean, I don't think there's another one that I know. So it's kind of, you got one of those cool names where, you know, somebody will say Emerald and they don't even have to say your last name, right?
That's true, but I am buried under 10 Google pages because there is a Justice League character named the Emerald Archer.
Oh my
Can you
gosh.
believe it?
You're kidding.
No.
On a TV show?
A comic book character I think they started with, and then there's been iterations of television shows.
Oh
but
my
yeah,
gosh.
So I'm buried, but people do remember the name.
Yeah, and how did you get that name? How did your mom select Emerald? It's such a beautiful name.
That's a great question. And, you know, I've never gotten a direct answer on it. I know that my parents couldn't land on one name, so they were really going back and forth. But at the hospital, someone said Emerald, and that was
it.
So,
okay, well, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so happy that we met through our mutual friends, Tabby Biddle and Lisa Parker, because we were both on the advisory board for Take the Lead Women. Awesome. And I just love what you're doing. I had attended one of your events that you hold in March.
Yeah.
What's the name of the event officially?
It's called the Report on the Status of Women and Girls in California Research Release Event. It's a mouthful.
I was going to say, and so is your title.
I know. Yeah, but this is an event where we share all sorts of data on women's advancement and gender equity benchmarks. And we kind of convene 1,000 women and men from across Southern California to talk about really timely issues on how we can support women and girls across the state.
Yeah. Well, when Tabby had told me that you all were having an event to release the Status of Women report, I was like, what? Yeah. I've got to be there, you know. And you hold it at the Skirball Center, right?
Skirball Cultural Center, yep, every March. So mark your calendar for March 26th, 2020. That's our next event.
Wonderful. And how do people get tickets to that?
Well, we put them on our website. So registration opens usually in late January, very early February.
And I'm going to have you say the website for me.
Yeah, it's www.msmu.edu/CAW.
So let's talk about what that means. So that's St. Mary's University.
Mount St. Mary's University.
Mount St. Mary's University. That's what it stands for. And then the / stands for Center.
Center for the Advancement of Women.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So hopefully they got that. And I think it's also on your, it'll be on the screen.
Great.
So how did you get involved in this? I want to talk about your entire journey. First of all, you grew up with a single mom.
I did. Yep. In Orange County.
Do you know, I hear that, and I've said this before, I think almost the majority of my guests say that they grew up with a single mom. It's really amazing how many single moms. So I'm starting to think there's a pattern here, like that single moms raise really resilient, strong women.
I think that's true.
Because I think of their experience and seeing their mom do it on their own, make it happen. They see that role model. It makes them strong. It makes them realize they don't need a man. Nothing wrong with having a man.
Right.
I'm just saying you can do this, you know. And so it must be why I have so many successful women on that were raised by single moms. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, I, grew up just with my mom in the house, and she really pulled herself up by her bootstraps. She's an immigrant herself. She's from England. But
what brought her here?
Well, she met my dad on the plane. So she was coming out on holiday, and they got married, and that was it.
And then she stayed.
And then she stayed. So, she had to create a career for herself to support myself. And she is, I think, one of my biggest inspirations because
I bet.
she's a hard worker. She's smart. She's, funny as a whip. But she really set the standard for me and really raised me to be a self-starter, to, move and make sure that as I'm moving up in my career that I'm also bringing other women with me.
Yes.
Which I think is important and something that I, continue to think about.
I admire that because that's what we all need to be doing.
Absolutely.
So you were sharing with me that from 4 years old to 16 years old, she would send you back to England.
That's right.
To be with family.
Yes.
And that, as a kid, you don't always want to, be traveling all the time. But in the long run, some really good things came out of that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it was only very recently that I learned that my mom initially sent me because sending me to my grandparents' house was cheaper than childcare.
Yeah.
Right? We know that childcare is so expensive in this country.
Crazy.
So that was a tactic that she used to kind of get by throughout the years.
But meanwhile, it was childcare.
Yep.
You got to spend time with your grandparents.
Yep.
You got to visit a whole nother country and culture.
Absolutely.
And all of that ended up being
life-changing.
A life-changing blessing.
And my grandparents would take me on their holidays. So I would be exposed to, I was in Cairo for my 13th birthday.
Oh my gosh.
I was in Mallorca for, another summer. So I got to see a lot, and that, of course, gave me the travel bug from being very, very young.
Yeah.
So,
oh, that's so cool.
No, a lot of great memories. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
What do you love most about England? They seem to be having a lot of, angst there right now. It's. I mean, not that we're not here, but I'm just saying there too.
Right.
What was your experience there, and have you been back lately and seen any differences?
Oh, that's a good question. So my family's from Northern England, so it's a very blue-collar steel town. And, I just love the people there. I mean, they're just so friendly and enveloping. It's a real small town feel that, everyone knows you, which is very different than Los Angeles, I sometimes feel like.
Yeah.
We're in this metropolis, which is a big city. But, I haven't, the last time I was in England was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And of course, in my, older age, I tend to go to a lot more different parts of England and explore. So Sheffield, where my family's from, remains very similar to what I grew up with.
Yeah,
but
nice.
The rest is changing, politically and all sorts. So, but England will always have a place in my heart.
Are they still living there?
So my grandparents are passed.
Oh, okay. Because I was wondering how they felt about what's going on now. But,
but I have cousins and extended family who are still there. And I haven't talked to them about Boris Johnson or any of the recent Brexit issues.
Right.
So,
it'd be interesting to know. So you said you still love to travel.
Still love to travel.
Yeah. Now, how did you get on the path to this place? So I know at one point your mom and you lived in Ohio for your high school,
That's right.
Okay. And you were telling me that impacted you in that basically your friends here in California were looking at 2-year schools, but when you went to high school there, nobody talked about 2-year schools.
Right.
They all talked about 4-year schools.
That's right.
For college, and that really impacted the route that you took.
Yeah. So, we moved my 8th grade year and came back to Orange County in this beginning of my senior year of high school. And in those intervening years, I took a lot of AP courses, which I found that when I came to my particular school in California, a lot weren't offered to the same extent that they were in Ohio. I never talked about a junior college, although junior college is incredibly important for families and students, right? Because it's affordable and it's a pathway into college if you don't know what you want to do yet.
Right.
I always kind of knew what I wanted to do, so I was really fortunate to have teachers who mentored me and helped me with my college essays and all of that. So,
but when you say you knew what you wanted to do, there's no way you knew you were going to be doing this.
No.
Yeah. And so you wanted to do the medical field, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
so,
doctor.
Yep. That's. I went to college, studied biology and chemistry. That took that degree with me as I graduated, and then decided to go to graduate school for political science, of all things.
Oh my gosh.
But, you know, I got exposed to a lot of different subjects in college, and I just found that political science challenged me in ways that some of the hard sciences didn't, although very, very challenging subjects themselves.
Right. But that's kind of more what fed your soul.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. I got really excited about, you know, questions of ethics and politics and how people move within systems and how people are marginalized because of our systemic issues that,
You know, it's so interesting that you've switched you know, everything in our life seems to, you know, be a puzzle to what we're going to do. So it's so interesting that you took that, not knowing you'd be running for the Center for, you know, the Advancement of Women, and how interesting. I'm sure that really has been so helpful to you in what you're doing now. So the first thing you did was you were on staff at Woodbury College, right?
Woodbury University in Burbank. So I taught politics and history there, and I was there for 8 years, and it was a great really first training ground for me to become a professor and to think about administrative roles in higher education. And I continued all of my scholarship, which really focused on women and security. So thinking about marginalized communities in the military, particularly, but
which
also
I know
veterans.
Is still near and dear to you.
Still very near and dear to me, for sure. And
so how did you know, what was your reaction when you got this opportunity to go be a director of the Center for the Advancement of Women? Who had ever even heard of such a thing? You know, it's like, to me, this is amazing that you run this, that the president of St. Mary's University came up with this idea. You know, so tell me about that. You know, did you get a phone call, or how did this happen?
So I ran into this job call for the inaugural director of the Center for the Advancement of Women.
Wow.
And, you know, it immediately spoke to me because it was a little bit entrepreneurial, it was a little bit scholarly. It really fed my passions in terms of advocacy for women's issues. So I said, I absolutely have to apply to this. So I did. And when I learned more about it, I learned that Ann McElhaney Johnson, our president of Mount St. Mary's University, really wanted to create a physical space that was a hub for gender equity research, leadership, and advocacy. So we're already doing so many things at the university because we're the only women's university in Los Angeles.
I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, so because of what we do with our students and how we train them up for leadership positions, because of all of our work related to the report on the status of women and girls in California and our partnerships with Mayor Garcetti's office and other women's commissions, she thought it was imperative to have a space on our campuses where we can really bring all of these gender equity initiatives on campus and external initiatives together. So we can make sure to push that agenda forward.
And, you know, now that you're explaining it to me, it makes perfect sense. Here you have a university of all women that you're training for leadership. What better thing than to fill them with all this research that helps to change up the game?
Exactly.
Because, like, well, what are the weaknesses and what are the strengths? So one of the ones I know that you teamed up with was the Geena Davis Institute.
Yes.
And I don't know if a lot of people know about it, but when I came to your event in March, it was the first time I was made aware of it. I didn't even know she had an institute that researches different aspects of Hollywood, like how many women have speaking parts, and how many have leading roles, and what kind of leading roles do they have, and it was explained at that event that she had noticed that how women were marginalized in, you know, not only in pay, because that's obvious, but in how many lines they were given, what kind of lines, what kind of roles. And I found that really fascinating when I started to think about it and look at it and think of how the disparity is. And the reason the disparity is so important is that as we're watching programs, subliminally, we're getting messages.
That's right.
And so as children or, you know, just growing up in our culture, the things that we watch obviously are impacting how we feel about women.
That's right.
based on that information, which makes that research so important and imperative
Yeah.
to creating change.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I just applaud what you guys are doing, and that's just one part of it because I know that's the one focused on television and film.
That's right, yeah.
But I'd love to hear about all the other ones. You know, the women's commissions, the
Yeah.
mayor's office. What are other aspects that you could share with us that you all have learned that are helping change up the game?
Right. So we've been doing our report on the status of women and girls in California this will be our 9th report coming up. So
does that mean 9 years?
9 years. So
Wow.
we released our first report in 2012.
And still, I'm so happy we're doing the show because still so many women aren't even aware of it.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So we want to get more women in that room, but we also want to get the data to more women, right?
Yes.
Which is always available on our website for anyone to download free of charge. But because of that model that we've created with our statewide report, other women's commissions or other government entities have come to us and said, we really want to know how women are doing in Santa Monica. Can you help us furnish the data so we can advocate in our backyard for
Wow.
women and girls there?
What about other states?
So there aren't that many reports like this. There are a couple that come out state by state and not on an annual basis. So the data is very sporadic.
So you guys are really the only ones that are focused on this, like year round,
That's
year in,
right.
year out.
Yep.
Wow, that's scary.
I know,
Yeah.
but
But you're leading the way.
Yep.
And hopefully other universities or entities around the country in different states will
I
take
hope
heed,
so.
right?
Yeah, last year I got a call from a colleague at Penn State, and she saw the report and said,
wonderful.
"Oh my gosh, how can I do this at my university?"
Wow.
So we had those conversations. So I think people are seeing this report and they're seeing the importance of the dissemination of data so that we can advocate, right? Because
Right.
if we don't have the information, we can't,
How do you change?
right,
Yeah.
in an intellectual way, say anything.
So when you do this data, is
Yeah.
it all information derived from women in California? And is that why other states need to do their own? Because
So-
it's different? I imagine there would be a lot of crossover.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of similarities. I mean, California is on the leading edge in a lot of ways. Like we pay women more here than other states across the nation, so that's
Right.
great.
Right.
But we're still underpaying
Because it costs
women.
more to live here.
Right.
It's all relative,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
Exactly. But most of the data in our report comes from the census.
Yeah.
So any state can look at their census report and mine their census, or it's the American Community Survey, and they can drill down to their state to look at gender equity benchmarks for women in their state. So
Right.
they can replicate this report by going to the census
Oh, wow.
website, which is up for anyone's use.
Right.
But that is a really great tool to
Right.
use so you can educate.
I feel like you should be like on the Today Show or 60 Minutes
Oh, thank
or
you.
something. Like, I would love to see you guys on that kind of a national level.
Right.
You
We're
know?
trying to elevate the conversation, certainly.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of initiatives that are ongoing through the university. Like the Women's College Coalition is coming to Mount St. Mary's, so I'll be overseeing that entity.
What is that?
So the Women's College Coalition is an organization that unites all women's colleges in the country. So there's 37 women's universities in the country. There are many international women's universities, right, outside of the United States. So, we're thinking, at least strategically, to see how can we expand this network? How can we elevate the conversation around the utility of women's education and the value of women's universities? So I think that's really important in the 21st century, where we know women's universities are tried and true in terms of preparing the next vanguard of leaders in terms
Right.
of women. So we're
Right.
excited to be a part of that.
Who are some famous women that came out of St. Mary's?
Oh gosh. Putting me on the spot now.
Uh-oh.
I'll have to fact check myself later. But I know that, for instance, we hired one of the first African American nursing professors
Oh, wow.
back in the 50s.
Oh, my gosh.
And our nursing
So they've
program
always been very
has
progressive.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet, who are our founders, have always really pushed pushed the agenda for women and girls, which has been exciting for me to follow in their footsteps.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about the television and film
Yep.
Outcome.
Yeah.
And do you want to add anything to that
Well,
of what your findings were?
yeah. So the Geena Davis Institute on Gender and Media is fantastic. They're a department of the Center for the Advancement of Women. So we are excited to collaborate on those data.
And has that
reports.
data been able to change anything in Hollywood? Just curious.
Well, people are using it. And certainly Geena Davis is, a fierce advocate for making, leveling the playing field. But she says herself, we can do this overnight if we simply just change some of the roles from men to women, right? We can change the story.
Right.
And, if more girls see themselves on camera, right, they then hear
In a positive
Right.
light and
Exactly.
in strong
Yep.
roles.
Right. That they're important, that their stories matter.
I agree with her. I also
Yep.
agree in the realm of what I'm working on is funding women.
Yeah.
That could change overnight too.
Yep,
You know?
totally.
So all of these things, they say awareness is first,
Yes.
right? So let's shed light and awareness on all these inequities.
Okay.
And then let's share awareness on
What we can do.
what we can do to solve it.
Totally,
right?
yeah.
So, what were some of the findings that came out of the television film?
Let me tell you about the report kind of writ large.
Sure.
First. So, education, we know education is a pathway out of poverty.
Yes.
So, California women who have only a high school diploma are 3 times more likely to live in poverty than those who have a bachelor's degree.
Wow.
So we know that encouraging college, whether it's junior college, a 4-year college, whether it's a trade school, right? That's really important to get folks out of poverty if they're
Right.
impoverished.
Right.
One really exciting statistic that I love to share is that California is home to the most women-owned businesses of any state in the nation.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So 59% of those businesses are owned by women of color, which is
Oh, wow.
excellent, right? They're
That's
holding the
great.
majority, so that's really exciting for us
That's awesome.
to share.
Yeah.
You had already mentioned gender pay inequities, right?
Yes.
Which I'll just touch on because I think when we disaggregate or separate different women in terms of pay, the story becomes even more dire. So when we compare women's wages to white men's wages, those are the highest earners across California. White women make 80 cents to every dollar compared to white men.
Wow.
Asian Americans make 75 cents to every dollar earned by
Women.
white women. African American women make 60 cents for every dollar
Oh
a
my
white
gosh.
man earns.
No wonder they're going and starting their own businesses.
Yeah, Latinas make 41 cents
Wow.
for every dollar white men earn in
Wow.
California.
Right.
Right. So those gaps get wider, especially as you go across. If you go eastward,
Especially
and
because you
south.
said the West, the women are paid more.
That's
Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
it's problematic for sure. And then the one thing that always gets me is maternal mortality statistics that we share in our report in the health section. So African American women are 3 times more likely to die as a result of pregnancy than any other race in California,
God.
right?
Wow.
So there are vast inequities that we have to
Right.
continue unpacking
Right.
and making sure that our healthcare providers understand these inequities so that we can turn this around. We're a first world country, right? We're
Right.
industrialized.
So
We're one of the wealthiest nations in the world. So
Absolutely. In California, one of the wealthiest
yeah,
states in the
Exactly.
in the world. So armed with this information, we
Yeah.
need to take action steps to level the playing field.
Right.
But like we said, the first thing is awareness.
Yes.
If we didn't even know there's such a disparity, we wouldn't even know we
can't.
had to fix it.
That's right.
You also have near and dear to your heart is helping women veterans, right?
Yes.
So you have a book
Yep.
on Amazon.
Yeah, it's called Women, Warfare, and Representation. So it's really a history.
Women, warfare, and representation.
That's right.
Okay.
So it's a history of women's participation in the armed services in the 20th and the 21st century. So that really has been the culmination of my scholarship, thinking about how to increase performance of women in the military because of stereotypes that often undermine their performance in a subliminal manner.
Right, right.
So that book was wonderful, but now I'm also thinking about veterans, women veterans who are coming out of the military and are a really vulnerable community, right? We know that they're the fastest growing homeless population among women in California.
Which is so sad and so unfair.
It is, right?
I'd like to better understand that, and that could be a whole nother show.
Totally.
And I know you're also part of a foundation that helps them, right?
Yes. So I'm on the board of the Foundation for Women Warriors, and that's the only foundation in California that serves women and children exclusively in their transition from the military to the civilian world.
Wow, it's the only one.
It's the only one. So
people need to get behind that.
Yeah, and the foundation's really wonderful because it's not a handout, it's a hand up. Right? We want to make sure that we are getting to these women before they can't pay their rent or before, they have to stop going to school because they can't afford childcare or whatever the circumstances look like, because we know, the VA is backlogged in distribution of checks that they've earned, sometimes by 3 months.
Oh my gosh.
So women, they're not getting their pay.
That's crazy.
Right. So yeah, there's
so they
a
get
lot
out of the military and some of them don't get their check for 3 months?
Yep, because the system, the VA is broken. So, there's a lot. And again, men experience this too.
Right.
But women are more vulnerable, I would say, because they go from being the most visible service member to the most invisible veteran.
Wow.
Right? Hardly any, can't tell you the story after story I've heard of women veterans saying, I went to get my 20% off, discount because I'm a veteran or whatever that was. And they're like, oh, well, where's your husband's ID? Right? They assume that they're a spouse rather than a service member or a former service member.
Right.
So there's a lot we need to do to support women veterans. And, they've given so much to us. So I
need to give back.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the work you all do.
Thank you for what you're doing.
And I hope that people Google the Center for the Advancement of Women, and that they come to your event in March.
Please, we would love to have them.
Which is, tell me the name of it again officially.
So it's the Report on the Status of Women and Girls in California Research Release Event. Total mouthful.
Yeah.
But it's the best event you'll come to.
Right.
It's March 26th, 2020.
Right. And
so
then they
mark
can
your
just
calendar.
Google St. Mary's University.
That's right.
In Los Angeles, and then find the center.
That's right.
And you have all the information
We
there.
do. Yep.
Yeah. They rock, huh? Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for being here and for the work you're doing. Please check them out. Thank you so much for tuning in. Go out and make somebody else's day. Make your day. Have a great week. Hugs and happiness.